Hey guys, this is Ryan with Lawn & Order Landscaping. Today we're going to review the Carter's Estate Entryway Landscape and Development. So the Carters contacted us around a year ago and asked us to develop a plan for their entryway. They discussed ideas of what they'd like to see in the entrance. Some of the ideas being mountain boulders, a more usable area, and then the pinnacle of the project is a carved black bear that we actually had a carving artist carve out of the stump of a large white oak that we also removed. So the Carter's job began with clearing. There was several years worth of growth and debris of multiflora rose, vines, brush, small trees, and even some large trees on both sides of the driveway. We used a mini trackhoe with a thumb to do the majority of the gathering and wadding up of the debris. We also used the trackhoe to load the debris, which was hauled away and disposed of. As the debris was being loaded mechanically, we also had manual laborers gathering, raking, and also using bladed trimmers to more finely cut the growth down to the ground to give us a more smooth appeal. As the first day came to a close, we had the majority of the clearing completed. But going into the second day, we began again with the finished clearing. We also moved into the grading the second day. As we had the majority of the organic material cleaned up, we began to get our grade from the left side of the future driveway. We started digging into the bank to widen the driveway, pulled a lot of that soil down to the bank below. To widen that, we had to pack this soil in lifts, as we call it in construction. So as we would bring over 4 to 6 inches, we would run the vibratory compactor across the soil to give us a more stable base. We also had to bring in several dump truck loads of fill dirt to add to this lower side of the bank on the left side of the driveway. This widened the driveway to over 20 feet wide, as Mr. Carter had requested. He'd like to put in a possible parking spot for an RV or a large vehicle at a future date. So we took this opportunity to go ahead and open up the driveway. Also, aside from the clearing that was being finished on the second day, we had the staff start to unstack a stone dry bed drain that was on the right side of the driveway. This was an open dry bed drain, and it was part of the job that we make the area to the right flat and usable. So we took out this stone and used this stone to restack a new drain that we had actually created to the left of the driveway that was buried underneath all the growth and debris that we'd uncovered. And so in opening this up, we reformed the drain, being efficient with our materials, saving money for the customer, and also saving movements without having to bring in new stone. As we had removed all the stone from the drain to the right hand side of the driveway, we began grading the area around the blackberry. This is our main point of interest and our main focal point for the job. And so as we moved into this area, we knew that we were going to have to grade back quite a bit. The terrain was pretty much sight unseen, as it had 12 to 15 feet of dense growth and foliage from 15 to 20 years worth of being unmaintained in this area. And so the topography was basically unviewable until we had it cleared. So it was kind of a big surprise. Once we got it open, we saw we really had our work cut out for us as far as the grading. We had to dig back into the foot of the mountain some 25 to 30 feet, taking that soil and moving it out towards the road. So digging back into the slope and then moving that soil out to the front of the slope, giving us a more level area for the future landscaping. One thing we had to be mindful of is that there were utilities by the road and coming up to the house in this area. Water lines were marked and an issue. There were also power lines and cable lines. So in digging with the machinery, we had to do some manual locating and make sure not to cut anything, which is always something that is tedious and keeps us on edge. We were lucky and able to complete the excavation without cutting anything or causing any major damage. The moving the soil and the excavating was something that took all in all several days, but the majority of it was completed by the fourth day. We had moved on into the drainage work, and we took the drainage ditch that was an open stone dry bed drain, and as we removed the stone from it, we redug this drain to be a little deeper and a little straighter so that we could reinstall a culvert in ground and rebury over the culvert so that we would be able to traffic over what was the open drain. As we excavated for the culvert, we also installed a 2x2 concrete drain catchment basin at the end of this drain to act as a junction box to connect the new culvert to the existing culvert running underneath the driveway. To install the catchment basin, we needed to dig the area out to fit the catchment basin and do a dry set by setting the catchment basin on the culvert, making sure that it would fit in the area we dug out, and then re-extracting the catchment basin, marking the shape, and then we had to drill through concrete in the circle shape that the pipe was going to be, and then use chisels and hammers to break out the shape of the culvert so that we could install it into the catchment basin. This is a tedious process and it requires a lot of time and care to get this hammered out without breaking or fracturing the entire concrete catchment basin, as the catchment basin is one solid piece of concrete. And so after we had drilled and bored the holes for the culvert to fit in and set the catchment basin, we installed the catchment basin on the culvert going under the driveway, and then also tied in the new drain line that was to fit in the ditch where the stone drain had come down parallel to the driveway. Once this was installed, we carefully rerouted around the culvert and made sure that there was a tight seal from the drain culvert into the catchment basin. As this was completed, we used soil that we had graded out to gradually add on both sides of the galvanized pipe. And one thing that I'm always preaching to my guys is to add the soil slowly and pack it in so that there's not a future sinking and settling after the work is complete. And as we brought the soil up over the halfway mark on the culvert, we began to use the plate compactor to run up and down the culvert to ensure that the soil was packed on both sides. So filling in around the pipe is not as simple as just pushing dirt around the pipe as some may think. A lot of companies do it this way, and that's why they're sinking and settling. It's another reason that pipes collapse is when you push dirt just over the pipe and then they're sinking and settling later, it will actually leave a void, and then if there's any traffic or weight on the pipe, it will collapse later. And then you can also have a juncture where the pipe has been coupled together where two pieces meet. Those can separate. You can have a break in the pipes, all from improper filling of the culvert. So once we filled in around the culvert, we began to establish final grade. This included digging the footer for the boulder wall. Once we were prepared for the wall to be stacked, we had the boulders delivered. We were not able to bring dump trucks all the way back into the area where the wall was going to be built. So we had to be ingenuitive and have about 30 tons dumped down by the road. And then we had a stroke of bad luck in that we had some heavy rains wet the area. So we had to have these boulders delivered across the street in a gravel parking area, approximately 35 more tons. These boulders, we had to move those across the street, which required us to have flagmen watching and directing traffic as the machine was used to transport the boulders back and forth across public road. So we were able to spread the boulders out where we could see the large, medium, and small ones that we wanted to pick through. And so then once we had our materials laid out, we were able to begin stacking the wall. We started the wall by picking the larger, flatter stone to establish the first course. We take the first course and usually put the jagged or imperfect side down, leaving a flatter top to stack the second course onto. As you can adjust your footer to compensate for the jagged top of the rock that you put down into the ground, this can also act as an anchor. But what you have to keep in mind as you build is to keep the second course ready to go on a flat layer. So you really don't want to have points and jagged pieces on top of the course that you set. And so we used the largest ones out of the entire 65 tons to set the bottom course, and tried to not go over 2 courses in one area. We try to stack 1 course or 2 courses all the way along and then come back and do the 3rd and the 4th or the 5th course. So in layers, we built the wall slowly and carefully. We used very local and very native Appalachian mountain boulders with moss and lichens on them. We had to be careful not to touch these too much, because every time the machine touches the boulders, it will scratch and scar the boulders and knock the moss and the lichens off, causing the boulders to not be as aesthetically appealing. So the less you have to touch them, the better. It's also important to get a good grip on the stone so it doesn't slide out of the bucket and the thumb, leaving more scar marks than necessary. And so while the boulders are on the ground, we try to turn the boulders over gently and figure out which side is going to be set down, which side is going to be facing out, and pick the stone up in the direction that's going to set. This took 3.5 days in just setting the boulders and backfilling. As we built up layers, we would backfill with stone and soil, and then when we got to the very top course, we were careful to use stones that would leave a level top course so that from the road it would appear that the top of the wall was flat. Once the wall was completed, we shimmed some of the gaps with some smaller stones. We saved some of the larger and the prettier boulders, set those aside, and brought those back out, spread those around the job site, and used those for decoration. Once we were content with that, we did the final grade, and then the final day we had 45 yards of double ground red oak hardwood delivered and dumped on the bank, and we were able to move this mulch by wheelbarrows. The pitchfork moved it to above the wall to cover the bare earth so there would be minimal erosion, and also moved the mulch around below the wall to cover all the loose soil. That completed the job.
Hi, I'm Tim Carter. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you how I met Ryan and Lawn and Order Landscaping. Margot and I purchased this house in 2011. We had the opportunity to have a bear carved out of our tree at the bottom of the driveway. And this young gentleman carved the bear, and it turned out to be a really beautiful piece of artwork. So in talking with Ryan, who has done work for us in the past, we were able to come up with a plan to landscape around this bear. It turned into a much more beautiful project than any of us envisioned. I can really speak for Ryan to come in and let him take his artistic ability and actually put together a plan for you and come up with a wonderful, wonderful landscape for your home. We've come up with a beautiful rock wall, rocks. We will do some additional landscaping, adding trees and bushes and lighting, and to highlight and accent the bear. And this is just our way to give back to the community a beautiful piece of artwork. And I would love to tell you how many times people have stopped by, giving us thumbs up, or just going by and stopping and just saying thank you very much. We appreciate what you're doing.